Today's focus is an urgent, quick show to get you guys some somewhat secret information on options trading and investing in Tesla. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Thanks once again for joining us. If this is your first time, welcome. If you're a repeat visitor, welcome back. We also want to thank our Patreon supporters. If you would like some good information to help you with your investment and trading process, as well as other videos not available to the general channel, please take time to join us on Patreon. So I wanted to do a quick sort of urgent show here. This show is really for those who've been around our channel for a while and that are friends of the show. If you're going to send me nasty comments, let's pass on this show, because I really wanted to get a quick show out, because there's information that's available today that disappears as of tonight. So if all my regular viewers are able to see this information, once it goes dark or secret, they'll have an opportunity to be exposed to it. So something happened. So what I did over the weekend was I pointed out that there was a battle between 650 call buyers and 650 put buyers. And the conclusion I came to was that this week Tesla would at least get into that 650 range because of the way in which the puts and calls were battling each other. Well, something very strange, interesting happened. It turns out that today, the 25th of June, 2021, there's something kind of amazing happening in the option space that I wanted to encourage you to be aware of. And that is that I'd like to have you type in, go to Yahoo Finance Tesla, and then look under options. And then when you get to options, scroll down to the 700 calls. Why? Because we have an interesting circumstance emerging, which is that for the first time in my memory, perhaps in the last 4 years of Tesla, there's actually an option, the 700 calls, that traded 220,000 times yesterday and only on 24,000 open interest. So sometimes it's useful to kind of look around at what the numbers are and what those numbers mean and what the trends are from them. So for me, the definition of what this means is that we have a huge amount of call options that are sitting out there, and those call options are giant in number. They're being traded heavily, and all of these options suggest that, hey, if Tesla gets over $700 per share today, there are a large number of market makers who lose a ton of money. So it's my belief then that the result of all this trading activity today will be that Tesla will end up somewhere just below 700 a share, because the market makers lose about $100 million if it goes above $700 a share today. So they're going to do everything in their power to keep that number down. And what we found was whenever there's this process of keeping things down in this fashion, it results in a spring effect on Monday. So, as you know, another reason why today is kind of huge is that we're a week away from the numbers on production for this quarter for Tesla. So this day on the calendar for Tesla in the option space only happens 4 times a year, just before the options week before the announcement. So we're going to be doing a show this weekend reviewing the trading week, especially with what happened today. But the issue that comes up, and the reason why I wanted to do kind of an urgent data trade today, is that there's a process with options. I'm trying to use my arm to block the wind from the water so we don't get too much noise across my mic, and hopefully you can hear me. So what's going on is that there's this whole bunch of data. There's how many open interests there are, how many shares have traded, what the open interests are for next week, how many of those have traded. There's all this information that you can garner from the option string today, Friday the 25th, that disappears sometime tonight, and you got to pay a lot of money to get this information later because that information is taken away from you basically as soon as the trading for the day is over. So anytime I look at an option string, the number one thing I do is, hey, what's happening at the 50s and the 00? So I want to know at 700, how many calls are there? How many have traded? How many puts are there? How many of those are traded? Same thing at 650. So it could be 600, it could be 750, it could be 800. As you notice, there's a trend here to sort of get a feel for what the market makers are doing or well-heeled investors are doing relative to trading in Tesla's instruments. So I wanted to kind of bring this up to you because what's going to happen is that I believe it's midnight, but it may be 9 or 10 this evening. All of this information you can see will disappear. Another example of useful information is that there's something called a 670 call. So while there are 24,000 open interests at 700, at 670 or $670, there's like 15,000 open calls there as well. So one of the things that will happen today is if the market makers can get it below 700, they love it. They pick up another, call it $50 million, it might be 70. If they can get it below 70, they actually pick up another perhaps $20 million, maybe $30 million. So there's basically a bare knuckle brawl that's going on between sort of the forces of good and evil, depending on if you're making money on this or not. And so the question for you then is, can you take time to watch the data as it's flowing and then use that data to sort of generally understand the flow of the environment, and then you can leverage that. What kind of information do you really want to know here? Well, number one, how many puts and calls are there within $50 of where we are now? Are there any high counts? Meaning, if it's above, let's say, 8,000 units of something, that's a notable number. If you got 24,000 like you do today at those 700 calls, that's a very notable item. And then the next question is, at the same numbers, let's look into next week, because next week is the big payback zone. Either Tesla's going to rocket high after the production announcement or rocket low, but a lot of the people are doing their buying and setting up their positions today that will address what's going on next week. So the next question that comes to mind is, yes, you want to look at the calls, but you also want to look at the puts. To some extent, they offset each other. If you have a similar number of puts and calls, they tend to cancel each other out in terms of the fact that the market makers are comfortable it going either way. And in those cases, instead of pushing it above or below, they're really trying to get it right on the number. So I didn't confirm the number of 700 puts, but basically we have 24,000 calls. I believe that the puts are about 5,000, maybe 7,000. So it's about a 4-to-1. Another data point there is, and that prompted me to do this show, is now wait a second, there's only 24,000 calls here. How can they trade 224,000 times? Answer, there's a lot of indecision about whether or not Tesla's going to make it to 100 or not. And there are people that are buying in, making money, getting out, getting back in. There's a whole bunch of action at that number. So I believe, based on watching Tesla now for the last 3 years, this may be the heaviest trading of one instrument I've ever seen on a certain instrument. In this case, Tesla's call options at 700, again, which is why I chose to do the show today. So there's a lot of conspiring issues here, including a lawnmower in the back that's not being cooperative. But please take time, if you're a regular viewer, to go through the option string of Tesla. Note how many 700 calls there are for this week, how many there are for next week. You could even go out 3 weeks. I also wanted to encourage you to note the number of them that trade. Like we're in the morning time right now at about 10 a.m., but we want to keep an eye on how many of these things are trading throughout the day, because if we're seeing very, very high trading, it delineates these options as really being important in terms of a good command of what's going on. And by developing a relationship with these, it's a little bit like jump rope. You develop a good command, and as you see the before and after on this trading, you can leverage that into better trading over time, and that information is only open today. So I think it's well worth your time to take a few minutes to review this. I'm going to take some photos of this at the end of the day. We're going to do some review over the weekend in terms of what happened so that we can leverage that information into better information process for trading. At any rate, just a reminder, we do have a few SpaceX shares. Hit us on Teslafaninsight, a private message in the Facebook area. We don't have that many, and we have a few people interested, but do check in if interested. Also wanted to encourage you to consider our health tips. Don't forget, if you're going to do lovemaking, please make sure that you eat a very small meal like a salad prior, because the blood flow will then be available for other extremities and not going directly to your stomach. We also wanted to note to you, no more than once a week for fried foods to avoid type 2 diabetes. At any rate, hope you're having a great Friday. Hope your weekend goes great. And please take time to review this options data for a few weeks prior to it disappearing as we head into the weekend. Have a great day. Bye for now. And thanks once again for joining us. This is Greg for Teslafaninsight. Tschüss, au revoir, lehitro, Hebrew, konbanwa, Japanese, namaste, Hindi, zdravstvuyte, Russian, ni hao ma, Chinese, hey do, Swedish, good day, our friends in Australia. And in Jamaica, we say, enough respect, walk good. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.